Excellent. So we just seem to have managed to go live. Now I've no idea what's going to happen this evening, because we swapped our internet connections on yesterday, and so it's possible that things might go pear-shaped. Everything's swapped over to the new server, but you never quite know, and the speed is meant to be much faster, but at least one person has warned me that they had problems when they went live, when they swapped. So fingers crossed I don't have problems. There we are. Can't share that because I've had enough problems getting the connection changed as it is, with an unwanted water feature when the first person managed to drill through the water pipes to the radiators. So I've got a hole in the wall at the moment, which they are sorting out, but nonetheless it's quite frustrating. Good evening, Michelle. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, and thank you for sharing the make I did the other day. It was much appreciated. Good evening, Sarah. Hello, Alison. Good evening, Carol. It's lovely to see some people popping on as ever. I've got different things going on different screens. It's just designed, to confuse me. And to be honest, that really doesn't take a huge amount of effort these days. I have had quite a busy day. I decided, along with a lovely friend, that I would go over to Lavinia Crafts this morning, to the new shop. It is absolutely beautiful, and yes, I'm a very lucky lady, because it's only just over an hour away from me, and so I could go over very easily. And I took a friend who doesn't drive very much, and we had a lovely time. But that meant I didn't have masses of time to think about a huge big project for this evening. So I've got a couple of things planned. We're going to do one and then see where we get to. But it's going to be very much a papercraft based live tonight, not a mixed media one. I'm aware that in the UK there's a lot more pure paper crafters than there are mixed media, so sometimes it's good to go back to something that it doesn't involve so many pots of paints and pastes and mediums, and just to do something a little bit different. Good evening, Crafty Jacks. Hello, Fiona. Welcome, my darling. I loved your faux wax tile the other day. It's a trick I might be borrowing at some stage. Hi, Sheila. Good evening, Connie. So let's just give enough time for a few people to come in on this Good Friday evening. I trust that you've all had a lovely day. And let's just clear some of this out of the way, because there's lots of bits already chopped up and ready, as is my want. And a very, very strange shaped piece of card on my desk. Let me just pop that. Let me just put that somewhere safe. Let's pop it just down on the floor over there. And then I'll forget where I've put it, of course, because that's the rules, isn't it? That is the rules. That's bound to be what happens. So, here is my very strange piece of card with its little flaps and things. So this is going to be a pop-up box card. It's a while since I think I've seen anyone demonstrate these, so I've prepared. Thank you, Fiona. I will have a go. I think it might be very appropriate for Songs of the Sea paper collection. Anyway, let's get rid of the rubbish that's making my desk all pop up. So I've pre-cut mine because I just wanted to make sure I had the figures correct. So I'm going to write out what I've done, and this card will go in an 8x8 inch envelope. So I've taken a 12-inch square piece of paper, white card, which was 300 GSM. Okay, so 12-inch square white card. I know this piece isn't, I'm just using this to write, that's 300 GSM. Okay. So if I, and then I've cut it, so there we are. It measures 20 centimeters in this height, and then I've score 7 centimeters, 14 centimeters, 21 centimeters, 28 centimeters is a cut line. Okay, so the solid lines are cut lines. Okay, now let me get a ruler. Okay, so let me just put this one in. So I'm going to draw a line here that is 10 centimeters, and this bit here is the bit in the blob, so it's 22 centimeters that way, and a bit, the bit in the blob from K, a bit of the blob. Okay. So at 10 centimeters I have placed, so what I've done, it's quite difficult, is this. So right, let me just come up here. So this is a score line, so 10 centimeters, and this is a score line at 10 centimeters, but only across the 3 pieces here. So these are all score lines, yeah? So those are score lines. And then, just to be difficult, this one is cut from the top down to that 10 centimeter score line. That is cut from there to the 10 centimeter score line, and this piece is cut from there to the 10 centimeter score line, and then this bit here is just chopped and thrown away. And when you do that, you will get a piece of card that looks like this. Yeah? With me so far? Yeah? So, cool. So that was why that piece of paper was there. And this will make our, she said, I've got bits of structure paste from another project everywhere at the moment. So these now all just need, as Kay would say, a bit of bossing around, you know, a good squash that way and a good fold that way to make them soft and compliant. And this is Pink Frog 300 GSM card, so it's a good robust cardstock for the structure of our card. So let's just pop that way, that way, that way. See, it's all designed to be difficult, and the reason that I chose 7 centimeters for my panels is that that will fit the topper sizes for the 8-inch paper pad from the Silentsea collection, but it also means that I can do this on a 12-inch piece of paper rather than needing to join different bits of paper together. If I was using A4, you might get, I don't think you've got enough length to do this. You'd have to slightly reduce this panel size, and then the cards might not fit on it quite so well. And this is literally going to fold round and have some flaps. So let me just squash these down, because we didn't do that. And you can chop these off. If you don't want long flaps, then you can get rid of them. But it will sit like this, standing up on a shelf, but will equally fold flat to go in an envelope. So it's 14 centimeters, 20 centimeters that way. And if you wanted, you could chop this down so it would go in a slightly smaller envelope, but I've left it like that because it works for the papers that I have chosen to use. And then we'll come back to the bars that I've got to go inside it when we get to that stage. But for me, if we decorate the outside of this, we just need to be mindful of the bits that are going to flap and what they're going to look like. So we're going to do the outside first, then we're going to pop it together and do the inside, and if that makes sense. So let's just pop this collection of stuff over here. So this panel is 7 centimeters by 20 centimeters, and so what I've done is cut from one of the 8-inch paper pads, because that's 20.3 centimeters, a piece of card that is 19.5 centimeters in that direction and 6.5 in that direction. And I'm just going to, rather than inking today, I'm just going to scruffle edges. So this bit will take us a little bit of time, but there we are. And these papers are beautiful. The houses are not UK beach houses, that's for certain. They're definitely more Hamptons, you know, sort of East Coast America, possibly. Yeah. But they are beautiful, and they're all collage style papers, so there's lots of elements that you can cut out. So that's onto there. So for there, right, so I just think it's sometimes helpful to understand the process and why I make things the way that I've made them. So it's just some white PVA glue, could be any cheap, you know, any PVA glue. You just need something that's going to adhere nicely. So I'm going to centre that in that panel. And at this point we then have some choices. Remember, these are going to be these pieces will be visible when the card is in the envelope. And in the 8-inch pad there are 6 toppers this size, and they are let's get a centimetre ruler. She says if she can find one. There we are. So these are just literally cut from the paper pad, and they are just under 6.5 inches, so 6.3 centimetres even, just to be difficult, and 9.5 vertically. And that gives you an uneven border, which I really didn't like very much. So I've then cut myself from actually one of the 12-inch paper pads, and I've chosen a 12-inch one because you can get all of the background pieces for these, or the first layer, from that paper pad without any issues whatsoever. So that's why I did what I did. So let's just scruffle these edges up. Let me come into here. because having started to scruffle them on one, we're going to have to do it on all of them. So let's just place that there. So we're just going to decorate. So there's lots of matting, matte and layer. Yeah, so that's all matte and layer means is one piece underneath your piece of paper and a second piece on top. I know we use lots of technical terms and without thinking about it, but not everyone is used to making cards or the concepts and the words that we used for doing it. So sometimes it's really helpful just to go back to our basics. And actually basics is good. It just gives you, so that is another 10 by 7 that will sit there. And I've got one of these. And you might have noticed these are plain on the back. So I am choosing to work with the background, the 22 page single faced pad, so the maxi pad. I know, horrible word, isn't it? Maxi pads reminds me of deaf women's sanitary wear, but hey ho, maybe that doesn't what it translates to in Italian or even in Hungarian, because Stamperia is an Italian company but actually based out of Hungary, just to be really difficult and awkward, making life easy. So that piece is going to go on there. And we've got lots of these, and we might move some of these around because I've got enough for all of the panels. And because I'm using the single-faced paper pads, I've got both sides. So in the double-sided paper, you will have they're backed with one of these panels. Great for tuck spots, for things. But if you're making cards, actually the single face pack is probably a more sensible pack to have, because because it doesn't because you're going to stick it down anyway, so you'll get, although it's slightly more expensive because there's more pages, you're actually going to get, I think, better use out of it. Yeah. So I've got all of these pieces every which way. Okay. So yes, there is quite a lot of rinse and repeat in here. Oh, don't. I just think it does its own thing when it feels like it's there. I don't get anything else. So who has joined me whilst I was whittling away? Good evening, Julie. Welcome, my darling. Hello, Sheila. That's very nice to see you all. Good evening, Maureen. Hello, Rosie. Good evening, Belinda. Good evening, Liz. Oh dear. I'm really sorry that it's just the pain sometimes. Good evening, Sue. Hello, Jan. So nice to have so many people watching. So that's going to go there. Let's just have a little bit. I know I have enough of these. Can I see all the papers? I can always cut another one. It's just, I think you've cut enough. And then you can't find one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3. Excellent. So we did cut enough. That's always helpful. Always helpful. So we're just going to decorate these up, and we're not, but as I say, and the intention tonight is not to be, is really not for me to be doing anything that is uber complicated, but really to do something that is, I think, a little different. It's not a it's not a simple card in that sense, but something that is highly achievable. A little bit of cutting, a little bit of matting, a little bit of layering, and you can still produce with actually fairly minimal supplies, because we all know I use masses of different things, because why wouldn't I? Because that's just what I do. I might just swap this around, and I'll explain why I've decided to swap this around. So I've got a lot of blue on this side, so I'm going to pop a lot of blue on that side at the bottom. It's just going to sit nicely, and I am going to put it so that the word is up the correct way, because why wouldn't you? There we are. There we are, lots of I'm finding that is happening quite a lot, and then all I can do to get back in is to come out completely, shut the whole thing down, Julie, and then come back in. And I'm deliberately, again, I'm not going to put these on any foam pads, because I want this to be able to fold down, and the flaps to fold and to go down nicely, rather than hanging up in the air. And I'm conscious that this, so all sea themed. So that is using those toppers from the 8x8 pad of paper to do that. And then I think I'm going to, well, I know I am, I'm going to add a little bit of some rub-ons onto some of these for some extra detail, just because I couldn't resist. So let's just get this lot with its scruffled edges stuck down onto here. And I've got lots of bits flying around, but that's okay, that's okay. So I chose an interesting piece for the long piece at the back. There we are. And you don't need to be complicated. Now then, for those of you that haven't worked out what is going on, the lovely Leonie, bless her, because she's as mad, beautifully as mad as a box of frogs, has managed to double book herself. And Hobbymaker gave Personal Impressions a TV show date for next Thursday. And Leonie, as we know, does All and Create Lives on a Thursday. So she's double booked. She couldn't change that for whatever reason. And that then posed a significant problem as to what to do, because Hobbymaker had their schedule in place, and they weren't also happy to move it around. And so as I make the samples for Leonie's shows, I was asked if I could help out, and I have to say I have said yes, but it's not a habit I have any intention of getting into at all, because I need to. My daughter is having to have one of her days off from work to dad sit, because none of us feel that he should be left in the house on his own nowadays. So anyway, so don't think that I'm taking over from Leonie, because I'm absolutely, that's not the intention, but that's what's going on. So I will be on Hobbymaker next Thursday at 1 o'clock and 5 o'clock, and let's see quite what happens with the stock levels. Now then, Julia, I've just heard you're seeing that you said, what do I think of the new collection? So let me address the elephant that is this collection. It's been done with being a little bit smaller. Hey, we might have some problems folding this in a minute, but we will get them. So traditionally, sea-themed papers and projects are not amongst the best-selling. I think because they're, we often think of English seaside, maybe not what we want to think about, and they're probably not most people's go-tos. You don't make many sea-themed cards, do we? And in the UK, we are predominantly a nation of card makers rather than scrapbookers or mixed media people. I think the mixed media world is growing, but I think it's slow, and I think it's, you know, it is what it is. Yeah. So there we are. Let's just tuck that into there. But Stamperia always have a sea theme collection, and I think that lots of people will have holidays and therefore will perhaps want to, you know, if you've made a travel to an exotic beach or Cape, you know, you might want actually a journal or a book that will work for. But as a primary card maker, I think you might not choose to do it. I actually love this collection because I love the colour palette. It's soft blues, soft reds, soft taupes and gentle browns. Think latte coffee colours rather than rather than garish colours. So I actually love it. I love the colour, but I will be the first to acknowledge that I actually like everything associated with the sea and sea themed projects, but I get that not everyone does. I like them. Some of the molds I love. Some of them are just huge, and I think might only get used very, very occasionally. The houses I love, but I do think that, in your personal opinion, that Stamperia is beginning to push their luck. There are only so many house moulds anyone needs, and we've had 2 lots of Christmassy ones. We've had some in the art travel collection, and now we've got beachy hut ones now. So I just think we're getting to the stage of actually having too many houses. Is there such a thing? But I don't, you know, from that point of view. But the houses are lovely. I like the rope in one of the molds. I still haven't got one of the soft molds because there were some production difficulties, and they haven't been sent out. There we are. So let's just refold this. I could have just done with cutting those pages just a little bit smaller. My bad. Okay, but yeah, that one's going to happen. So let's just, and then I'm going to reinforce those big style. Okay. Let's just reinforce them the other way as well. And paradoxically, it looks like it might sit better that way, but hey go, that is not the way it's going to go, because that's not what I want. So whilst we're on those out, let's just add some of the rub-ons onto here. Let your spirit fly. I think that might be a nice sentiment. So we're just going to pop some sentiments onto these just to add just an extra bit of interest. You don't need to. I just think it's just going to add another layer of detail onto our piece. And let's just give this a little good rub down. Now, whenever you're using rub-ons, the Stamperia rub-ons are really very good, but they do need to be on a dry surface, and hopefully the glue underneath has not seeped through and is going to allow me to peel off very easily. And yeah, am I going to be extravagant? Yeah, I am. And I'm going to pop. Do I want drift in piece? Let's put drift in piece. But why not? Why not? Why not? yeah, we always, well, you know, overseas holidays just didn't exist when I was a child. Very few people ever went on a plane. How the world has changed. So we're just going to centralise that in there and pop it onto there. Hi, Sarah. So why are you sitting on the fence, Julie, about the collection? Everyone will have different views, won't they, and different feelings about it. So if you lift off the pieces, your paper for your rub-ons carefully, then if it hasn't quite peeled, you know, set itself down, then and then you can give it a little burnish over the top to make sure that it really has got everything in. You like the, Michelle, you like the collection? Yeah, I'm glad. And I'm going to pop that one up there. So am I being extravagant? Yeah, I am. I think, well, we had a car because my dad had a car for work, but I know that, again, you know, we'd walk down the road from my parents and almost no one had a car. We were the, you know, and if you go down the same road now, it's dodged 3 cars per household or 4 cars per household. It's an absolute nightmare. My sister lives in the house that she was born in, so I you know, I visit it on a regular basis, or semi-regular basis, and it is absolutely. So there we are. So in the envelope, when someone gets this card out, this is what they're going to see. Yeah, like this. So it looks nice. Well, that's my concept, is that it looks nice. Okay, so we're now going to flip this over and pop this down, and by doing this way, ladies, you're going to make sure you get your pieces on the right side of the paper, because if you do it differently, I can guarantee, well, I know I can guarantee that I'll end up with the wrong pieces in the wrong place. So I'm going to pop, or in the wrong direction. Here we are. And we won't need rub-ons in here because we've got the 3 other toppers from that feature pad that's there. So let's just do this scruffling again. I was aware when I did this we were going to have you know, lots of repeat, but that's just okay, you know, it's the real life, isn't it? And if we can do this, you know, I know I cut everything, but it's not going to take us, hopefully it shows that you don't have to spend ridiculous numbers of hours making a card if you don't want to, but you can still have something that's a little bit different. There we are. There we are. There we are. So my holidays would have been in the 60s and 70s, Sarah. We definitely had chuffing trains, not high-speed ones. But there we are. And actually, to be fair, our holidays usually consisted of going down to St Leonard's, which is where my grandmother lived, or Hastings. Yeah, Hastings St Leonard's, which is where my mum's mum lived, and then Broadstairs, which was where my great aunt lived. I do remember once we were thrown in, the 3 of us were thrown with all the luggage in the back of a small car and driven to North Wales because my dad wanted to go to Wales, and we stayed on a beautiful farm. But The journey was not very pleasant, as you might imagine. 3 children and a week's worth of self-catering clobber in the days when Airbnbs didn't exist and you had to take your bed linen and things with you. There we are. I think it's different. Yeah, Julia. I own up to the fact that I absolutely love anything to do with the beach. So I love the collection. In fact, I prefer this to last year's, which was more heavier. I love Antonis to bits, but his style is very heavy, very layered, very dark in all of his makes. It's if he hasn't got black or dark brown in it somewhere, it's not an Antonis make, is it? And multiple layers when you think, really? And you've just covered 99.9% of that beautiful piece of paper. And one of these things for certain is that paper crafting really does, like this, really does let the papers shine, which is a nice thing to do. There we are. Okay, so let's just pop that onto there, cover that up. And one of the thing was these, yeah, and if you didn't want to add this, you really don't have to. You know, it's entirely up to you how much you put on. It could just be a single piece of paper, rather than these. You might choose not to have the background paper and just pop the little panels on, and that's also absolutely fine. Okay. So we now have piece of paper that looks like that, and this is exactly why I did this the way I did, because these look upside down, but when this card is in use they're going to be up the right way. Okay, it's going to sit like this. Now at this point, because I've put the paper on that side, I'm actually going to take this onto here, but you could wrap it round if that's easier. And I did have some red liner tape out. In fact, I've got two like these, the red liner tape there. I don't need those magnets stuck on there. Naughty magnets, go up there out of the way. So let's find an edge of the right of here. And let's turn this round. Thank you. Well, I'm glad I've been inspired. It's really not difficult, and I have done them in all sorts of different sizes at different times, but I just thought sometimes it's good to go back to do something that's been around for a long time, just to do something that's just that little bit different. I'm going to add some glue, but you could just put tape over the whole of that without any problems, and that will work. And of course we've got pesky red liner tape, so it's always going to be a nightmare. You know, and then we've got bits of static everywhere, so let's just tie that bit into a knot, and hopefully that will mean that it's less staticky and won't go all over my floor, because that's also not uberly helpful. Let's just pop that into there. Pop that into there. So if I now fold that in half, that should line up with the edge of there, and by folding it over it hits without a problem. Yeah, cool. So I now have my box that's here. and I've got an ugly bit there that needs to be dealt with, and this will be a bit of a pain in the butt, but it just has to be done. So I have another 6.5 by 19.5 strip of paper here. Now if you're really paranoid, you could cover the inside of these pieces, but you're really not going to see very much of them by the time we've put in the extra pieces that really stack the interest in what we're doing. There we are. So let's just pop this, and then we can slide it into place. There we are. There we are, there we are. So let's just slide that into there, line it up at the top and centralise it top and bottom, and then hopefully we can give it a little squash down. And if I do this and just take a flat bone folder, I can squash that just to make sure that it's in place. There we are. Okie dokie. So we now have a nice box type card with all the pieces, nice visual interest that we can flip the sides up and put in an envelope, but it looks pretty effective. But we need to pop something into here, and it's clearly a big space, so it needs some baffles to come across. So where did I put my piece of paper with my measurements on? Oh, well, let's just grab another piece of paper. So I have 3 pieces of card here. Okay. They are 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 centimetres in this direction. Yeah. And I think I cut them at 3 centimetres, but yeah. But they could be 2. It's up to you. The width is up to you. 3 centimetres from there to there. Okay. So piece of card, 11 centimetres by 3 centimetres, scored at 2 centimetres. That's a score, and at 9 centimetres. There we are. Okie dokie. Yeah, of course it's in a safe space, Scrappy Jacks, and I've got 3 of those. Okay. And this is always a bit of a pig, and I'm not going to hide from the fact that it's a pain. Okay, because it absolutely is a pain getting these in. And you know, but whatever you do, yeah, and of course the ends of the tape's gone walkabouts as well. So let's just pop a piece of tape onto there. Piece of tape onto that, and repeat at the other end. Yeah. And I'm deliberately putting in 3 baffles, but you could put in less. You could just put 2 in, but I do think that. So let me just, I'm going to pop that one this way for reasons that will become clear. Okay. So I've now got the tape on the wrong side for that one. So bear with while I just redo that on this side, and we'll use that one in the middle. So I folded these first ones inwards, and I will explain why I've done that. because there is logic or a method in my madness. I know, who would have thought there might be some method in my madness? But there is. So let's just pop that there, because we're going to have to do this on all of them anyway. So these ones I've deliberately pushed going forward. Okay. Let's just pop that there. Pop that there. Get rid of that, because it's difficult to pick red liner tape off once it's half in. But we will be putting a goodly measure of glue onto these. She says, there's the glue. Okie dokie. So I'm going to do this upright. So it might be more difficult for me, but I think you'll be able to see what's going on. Okay. So by doing this, I can pop that piece into there, and I can butt that so it's up at the edge here, up and at the front, and stick that into place, but butt it up against that front wall, and then I can pop this piece in and do the same. So I'm flush here, and I'm right up against that front wall. And then I'm going to do the same at the back, but not at the front. Okay. So let's just do this one. Do that one. And if I really can't face using that one, I'll just cut myself another one and retape it. So I just pull the tape off, I shall end up with a pickle, won't I? Theoretically it should work. I should be able to just move it around, but my brain is a bit addled. Okay. So let's just get rid of more of that pesky red liner tape. You need something for fast grip, otherwise you're going to have to hold while the wet glue grabs. If the wet glue suits you better, just be aware that you will need to wait. So we're just going to pop this into here. Okay. So this one is now going to sit right to the back of there and flush, and right to the back and flush. Yeah? Okay. And now I want to put another baffle into here, and I am actually going to give these a little haircut, because it's going to be easier. So these would, so this is 7 centimeters, so that gives me a 2 centimeters gives me a 3 centimeter gap in the middle, and that's slipped, but never mind. So I've just cut this a little bit smaller so that I can have a smaller gap in that middle, but I want the third baffle in there. I don't very often make cards, as you all know. There we are. So I'm going to sort of eyeball halfway between. There we are. Pop that in place. Pop that in place. Approximately eyeballed. And because I've only got one piece of tape on there, it's just going to take me a bit longer for it to grab. So let me just get that grabbed in that. and that's quite handy because I can have finger measurement for that side as well. There we are. I'm not minded about those being asymmetric. If it's going to bother you, then obviously you do you. But trying to divide the space of 7 evenly isn't necessarily an easy feat. If we do that and give it a squash, they'll all grab, and give them a few seconds just to grab. And then we just need some bits to do a little bit of decorating. There we are. Wow, this has taken that baffle is going to be a pain. It will grab eventually, I promise it will, because it's got glue and tape, hasn't it? So because I didn't cut off all the tape. There we are. Right, so I have cut some pieces of paper 6.5 centimeters by 2.5 centimeters, because those baffles just look boring. Sorry, there's no other way for it. They're boring and not very nice as they are plain. But you don't have to do this, you can leave them completely plain, but I will have parts of these showing. I haven't gone to town and added 55,000 different bits. There we are, so we'll just pop that onto there, centralise that reasonably in there. Try and get the text up the right way, she says, because this paper does have a text on it, but not that you can really read it. There we are. So we're just adding these onto the fronts of this. There we are. And there was me this just before tea this evening thinking, this isn't going to take you very long. Maybe you need another card prepped. Well, I don't think I do need another card prepped. I think we'll have just about enough time. There we are. Now you can put a pocket on the back quite happily if you want to. I've just put a beautiful piece of paper, so I don't want to do that. But you could put a pocket on the at the back and write your message onto that quite happily. Use a plainer piece of paper. That will work. You could put your message on any of the little flaps. There's space to write to and from in any of these, or a personalised message. If you added a pocket onto the back, then of course you could put a, there we are, have I lost anything? Possibly, maybe not. You could then put a gift card on the back, because there's space to hold it. So let me just let's take 55,000 distress inks and tip, and then I'm going to stand up. Okay, so I've cut from the paper pad. This again, you can tell that this has come from a paper pad. This is the single faced doesn't have the fussy cut elements, ladies. Okay, it just doesn't. So you just need to be aware of that. It doesn't have them. Okay. So I'm going to pop myself a lighthouse at the back of there. And if I'd got she says, what was she thinking? If I had the paper cutouts, I might have used those, but I don't. So my drinks barrel, because is going to go there onto that, and then I've got a couple of boats, and these have all come from the back page of the thing, and then we're going to pop that onto there, because why not? And then we have some extra bits and pieces that we can tuck in or not, as the case may be. We don't necessarily need to add masses and masses. There is a little succulent in the paper pad. I might be tempted to add this piece, but to the back piece here as opposed to the front, so it's tucked behind the lighthouse here. A little bit of it will pop through. There we are. So I pop that down. You might not be able to see very much of it, but that's fine. And we could pop that onto there. But I'm actually going to think, do I want him there? I'm actually going to pop him right down there rather than up high. So I'm layering my pieces. Add a little shell onto there. I'm going to tuck that shell down there, and we've got a little pebble or another shell which can just go onto there. So all of those add lots of little layers of detail. Okay, that makes sense. So it sits up like that, and you could carry on, you know, there's nothing that says you couldn't add more and more pieces, but actually for most of that you're only going to see what's at the front, so you don't need to add 55,000 pieces. But we do have a very boring piece of paper there, so this again comes from that. I'm going to scruffle the edges of this because we can, and we're just going to tuck that where the sea meets the sky into there. And that is the front cover of the double-faced papers. There we are. So we now have our pop-up box card. So in the envelope, flat, let's get rid of that, like this, yeah? So on the outside it looks pretty all the way round. Space for a message, or there, so lots of spaces for there. Okay. These pieces flap down, so we've got an image that looks like that. And if we flap it the other way, it looks like that. And when it's standing up, it'll look like that. So ladies, we've used one page from a 12 by 12 backgrounds. You could use the 8 by 8, but you'll need at least 2 pages to do that. For these, I've used parts of 2 different pages for the background of the big piece, but that could be all taken from one if that's what you wanted. So one 12 by 12, one 8 by 8, 2 of the panel pieces from there, and a few cutouts and a piece of card and some rub-ons. Yeah, let me just leave that on there. So I hope that that's been a useful make for you. I know it's not my usual style, but actually I stopped making cards and things like this because they weren't taking me very long, and I was then producing lots of them and I almost never send them. So it just seems a bit silly to do that. Anyway, so where we are, it's taken us the best part of an hour, which is plenty long enough for an evening when I've been off out and about. I shall put all the bits I prepped for the other card into an envelope so that it's a demo ready for TV, and if not, I will post it. Okie dokie. So that's a request to do some more cards in the future. Noted. Yeah, absolutely. But you don't always have to go. I mean, I like texture. I like layers. I don't like brown grunge. And I hope even with my mixed media pieces, brown grunge isn't what I do, except that brown is definitely the feature colour of my piece that's planned for my Pent Art Live on Tuesday. Because as a child, my brother used to like collecting fossils. Very good, you said. So we used to go to the beach on the south coast, and there's lots of fossils in the cliffs along the south coast, and we would spend several or many hours of our holidays collecting fossils. There we are. Off the beach. And there is a beautiful fossil mould, so we're going to make a panel that reminds me of fossil collecting. Okie dokie. I will do my best. I'll mix it up. I get bored very easily. It has to be said. I do get bored very, very easily. So ladies, please take care. Look after yourselves. Enjoy whatever you're up to tomorrow. My plan is very definitely to do a live on Sunday afternoon at 3. When I'm going to be using the MDF shapes that come with this collection, I think, and more papers. There might be a bit of mixed media added into the mix for that one, but it's definitely going to be more paper based than fully mixed media. But Tuesdays is definitely full on mixed media. So take care, ladies, be safe, and hopefully I will see some of you on Sunday afternoon. Bye.